Hello everybody, Mark here back at the hangar, and I'm super excited to bring you the fourth installment on the repairs to the Seamax. You'll notice we've got her behind us off of the stands, we've got the bottom finished. So let's go through and take a look at how we did the priming and painting and got to this point. Let's get started. Hello everybody, Mark back here at the hangar. So today we're going to be moving on to the priming of the aircraft. Very excited about this one. And there's an epoxy primer that we're using, followed by a one-step epoxy paint rather than a clear coat. And so today, when we start the priming process, we've got an election between either an HTE gun, which means high transfer efficiency, this type of gun right here, or an HVLP gun, and that stands for high volume low pressure. I'm going ahead with the high volume low pressure gun because of my small compressor that I have. It's not a high volume one, and the HTE gun takes about 15 cubic feet per minute potentially, and this is about 6 at the maximum. So this is just a much better selection for a smaller compressor. And there's basically 4 different adjustments on this. On the inlet tube here, there will be a regulator to regulate the amount of pressure that's coming to the handle itself. There's an air adjustment here that decides how much air is actually passing through the gun itself. That helps with the viscosity of the fluid that's in here, the paint that comes out of the container on top. You can adjust the pin inside with this adjustment, and you can adjust the pattern, either elongated fan or more circular, with this knob, depending on how much air you shoot through these side nodes right here. So I did a little practice yesterday, and I think I've got it dialed in pretty well. If you go too low on the amount of air passing through the gun, the paint just dribbles out in a stream out the front. A little bit more and it comes out in a splotchy manner. So you got to adjust the amount of air properly to get a nice fine mist coming out of the front of this. Adjusting the needle as well helps you with how far in your trigger goes, and therefore how much product is being sprayed on the bottom or on the surface that you're working on, based on the amount of air that you have coming through. So more thread showing means more product is going to come out, more likelihood of having some orange peel come out. You want to have a nice, just light coating. Go back for a second one after that if you need it, rather than trying to lay it on real heavy at first. So that's a quick explanation of the gun. The HTE gun is very, very similar. You know, this one I have the regulator attached to it. This one, the regulator is on the actual hose from the compressor. Same sort of thing. It's got air control right here for how much air enters the gun. This is your needle control here, and this is your fan control for the front here. It's also important to look at the specs of the materials that you're working with as well. That's going to direct you to the size orifice that's on the front of the gun itself. Generally speaking, the less viscous the material, the smaller the hole in front, and the heavier the material, like glues and mastics and things you might be spraying on your walls in construction and that sort of thing, that are much more viscous, is going to require a much larger orifice to let that stuff out. So in this one, both the primer and the paint, the 1.4 is going to be the perfect size for both of those applications. So let's get started. Going to go through a little bit of how we set up for the painting right now as well. Actually, in this case, the primer, but painting will be very, very similar. It's a 2-part primer, it's a 3-part paint, so we'll focus on the primer right now. We're going to mix it up into this bucket here. We're going to do it by weight like we did for the epoxy. Essentially, we're going to put the paint in. It's a 2-to-1 between the paint and the activator, and then we'll strain it through this paper strainer that, I don't know if you can see right there, has some very tight screen in it. and then it will drain down into the cup, which is the reservoir on the gun itself. Then we'll cap it with the cap after we get it about 3/4 of the way full, and then we'll go about our spraying. Hopefully won't make too much of a mess. Can't guarantee it. All right, let's get started. Looking pretty good. Be the test to see how much of this I get on myself. Honestly, I don't know how much we need gram-wise for this cup. It's 20 ounce, handy old clear solo cups. To scoop out a known amount weight-wise on the scale, then we'll go ahead and mix in the activator, and then I'll get some practice in. A nice flat surface for this. All right, I'm gonna do this on the floor because this is not really a super flat surface and I'll get incorrect readings. All right, so here we are on the floor now. I got a nice stable platform to work off of. And then we're just gonna take a couple of cupfuls of our material here, mixing container. I really don't know how far this goes underneath the aircraft so far. There's 400 grams by weight, we'll start with that. That's probably enough to do the areas underneath the aircraft that I need to do. If I need more, we'll mix more. Cap this right back over. Now, since I got 400 grams of the paint in there, this is a hardener. So basically works like the epoxy resin that we used on the bottom of the aircraft, except this is a 2-to-1 rather than a 2-to-5. So we're at 401 grams. I'm gonna go until I see 600. All right, 600. And then we'll stir this up, stir stick, and then we'll put it into the gun. This is gonna be plenty, I can tell. Stuff isn't particularly cheap either. In that 1 gallon and those 2 hardeners, it was a couple of $100. Worth it though, for the airplane. All right, that's looking pretty good. Okay, now that we're back here at the table, we've got our paint measured out and mixed. I'm gonna go ahead and strain it through the paper here into the container of the gun, and we'll be able to get started. Totally jealous of all those folks I hear overhead flying around. I've been stuck on the ground here for too long. All right, here we go. Again, try not to make too much of a mess. That was actually a really good amount. There's also a filter in the receptor part of the gun as well that strains out anything else that might be in here. So, all right, I think we're good there. Cap this bad Larry off. Look, I got it on me already. All right, tighten this up. Shorts on there well. And then, what do we gotta do? We gotta protect ourselves, right? So, respirator, Tyvek suit. We're also going to utilize rubber gloves, of course, that I didn't put on yet, which is why I have it on my hands already. I always think I'm going to do so well, and then mainly I'm concerned about overspray in this situation. I don't want to get too much on me, but this stuff is pretty caustic and it smells terrible. So we definitely want to protect our lungs. All right, let's do this. Now outside for another test. Want to come out, see if all our dial-ins are still good. You can see, I'm not sure whether you can see or not, but that's coming out really dimply, which means I don't have enough air. Now I got enough air. Definitely coming out in a better pattern. I think we got it dialed in.
All right, I can't stress enough either to wipe down your surfaces that you're going to be spraying with some degreaser or cleaner. In this case, I'm using 99% isopropyl alcohol, and it really does the trick. That way we have no dirt on there, no grease on there, no dust on there. So when we do spray or use adhesive on that prepared surface, it's going to stick. We're not going to have separations later. So very, very important step. Got to do it every time.
All right. We shall see.
Well, from first time through, I thought that went pretty well. I've got a little bit of orange peel here or there, and I'm sure some of you pros out there are slapping yourselves in the face and screaming at the TV. But if you got any helpful hints that'll help me to integrate my skill set, by all means, drop them in the comments below, and I'll integrate them in. I appreciate everybody's input so far. Here it is after the first coat. Not too shabby, kind of hard to see. It's very flat lighting in here. I'd say we got a pretty good finish coming along so far. Need some sanding here. But all in all, I think things came out pretty well, and I'm looking forward to sanding and seeing how it looks after it's sanded. So yesterday's work with putting the primer on went well. We let it cure overnight, and today we're going to hit it with some 400 grit sandpaper and clean up the bottom of the aircraft with that 99% alcohol, and then we're going to get started on another layer of primer so we can fill in all those little imperfections and again sand that down. We may need a third layer as well depending on how it goes, and then we'll move on to the paint. Let's get going. Okay, now that we've got the next layer of primer on and sanded back, you can see it's got a very nice finish to it. It's very flat. We've got a couple of scratches here, but we're gonna touch up some of these areas, and I've sprayed down the areas where it was thin. You can see the darker kind of colors there, and up here where it's shinier. We're gonna grind that with our 400 grit sandpaper again as well, and hopefully we'll be done with the priming and be able to move on to painting. All right, so I'm satisfied with the way the primer patch repairs came out. We've got a pretty good bottom on it now. Very few light areas, but nice and smooth. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix up some paint now and see how this goes. Wish me luck. Okay, now that the primer's all done, applied, sanded, multiple layers, let's move on to the painting. And we're going to go through mixing up the three-part paint itself. I'm not really going to get into the gun setup because the fundamentals are basically the same. You just have to make adjustments to make sure you have the right pressure coming to the gun through your regulator, that you're moving enough air through the gun with the adjustment on the pistol grip at the base of that. Again, your needle to adjust how much of the paint material you want moving through the gun with the air. And then once again, the pattern knob on the side of the gun to give you either a round or a fan shaped application pattern. So without further ado, let's get started.
Okay, so here we go, mixing up the actual finished product. This is polyurethane paint that Seamax used originally. It's a PPG product that is no longer available. So I was able to source it through my contacts with the factory. So this is going to be a mix of 3 different components. We've got the actual paint substrate itself, then we've got a hardener, and we've got a thinner. And it goes in a ratio of 2 parts of the paint, 1 part of the hardener, and half a part of the thinner. So I'm going to mix up basically 700 grams worth of this material, 400 of the paint, 200 of the hardener, and 100 of the thinner.
All right, there's 402. All right, put this bad Larry away. All right, now make sure it's the hardener. I'm going to get 200 of this in there. All right, 200 of this. 603, all right, perfect. Put that away in case I accidentally try to go for it again. And now, the thinner. 100 of the, yeah, 100 of this. Perfect. Man, that just fit. Give this a good stir. Try not to make too much of a mess. Yeah, very, very thick paint feeling material. Very, the thinner and the hardener are definitely thin things out quite a bit. This feels thinner than the primer. Very exciting, I know. I'm pretty psyched to be getting to this point though with getting some paint on this bird without making a mess of it, I hope. I don't know how this fills on top of the primer. I assume I'm going to need a couple of coats since it feels like it's lighter consistency to it. I'm going to have to use lower pressure and a lower flow rate. Up our screen flow cap. Nice and tight. All right. Now all we got to do is attach this to the gun and get the gun going inside. I'll be back. Well, for the most part that went okay. There were definitely some areas that I laid it on a little too heavy, and I've got some streaking in there and some droplets. I mean, you got a nice, good color in there and coverage, but I don't know whether you can see on this or not, but there's a lot of runs. Overall, I like the way it goes on. I'm just having a real hard time keeping a consistent distance away from the hull as I paint. Additionally, as I was working near the edges of my curtain on the airplane as well, the fluid container at the top of the gun was getting stuck against the sides and making my hand jerk, which led to a couple of areas where it went on heavy. So got some sanding ahead of me on that and another layer to put in there. So I'm learning. It's gonna come out really, really nice. I really like the actual finish itself. I just gotta hone my technique a little bit more and try to avoid the heavy spots as I go. Alrighty, off to the next thing, clean the gun. Alrighty, now that and we're moving on to more painting, to avoid the problems that I had with the gun sticking to the side of the enclosure, I just spent the last day building a much larger enclosure around the aircraft so that I can apply the paint with much less difficulty. Let's take a look. Okay, so unfortunately, the first layer that I put down, because I had such a small enclosure underneath the aircraft, as I was working the paint gun along, I was catching the side of the plastic, and that was causing the gun to sort of stop and jerk, and it gave me a bunch of spots where it went on too heavy and it ran. But you can see we've got it sanded back, the darker areas, of course, down to the original primer. I should say the primer that I'd put on. And that is the areas where it kind of went on heavy and dripped. So I'm going to mix up some more paint and go ahead and get another layer on. Let's get going. Second layer of painting went on. It went on a lot better than the first layer because I was able to move a little bit more freely. Let's take a look at where we're at right now. All right, not so shabby. We got a couple of streaks here and there, a couple of drips where it went on a little heavy. I'm pretty happy with it. It's looking pretty good all around. Gonna have to sand and do one more layer, and then we're gonna have to do some buffing of that to get the final finish that we want for it in the end. So stay tuned, we got more to come. Well, after 36 hours of drying, we're back here at the hangar to sand off the second application of paint and get it ready for, hopefully, the final application. Let's get started. Well, very happy. The sanding went very, very easy. I was able to touch up the spots that I needed to where I had those drips. That cleaned up really nice. I've got 2 more layers of paint on there. You notice right at the end, I've got like 1 or 2 spots where I've got a couple of small runs in the paint that I'll be able to touch up and work over the next time I'm out here. So very happy with how it's looking right now. Let me show you inside. So here we are. Nice uniform shiny finish, a couple of layers thick. I don't see any primer underneath the paint. Now, of course, this material is going to have to be sanded a little bit, compounded a bit, then really worked on with a buffer to get the nice even consistent shine. Because if you can see in the reflections right there, you can see there's some, as they call it, orange peeling. So we just kind of work on knocking that stuff down and getting a nice uniform surface with some high grit sandpaper, and then do some compounding, get all the swirls and everything out of it. And that's going to be a nice long day of sanding. That will be the next break in days. Very happy with where we stand today with, I think, the last bit of paint on, except for a couple of touch-up areas I'm going to have to hit where we've got a couple of drips there. But otherwise, looking really good. Getting close to the end here. Hello, everybody. Now that we have the bottom painted, I have got it buffed out. I apologize. I didn't get any video of me doing any of the buffing, but I got a couple of pictures here that will show you. Now that it's done, I'm very happy with the results. Let's take a look at it. So, as you can see, we have the airplane off its stands. But this gives you a view of the entire bottom. You'll notice we got a very nice shape out of the bottom of the aircraft with all our hard work with the fiberglassing and putty, and then finally our primers and paint, and we got a really good surface. I ended up using compound, a high grit compound with the green buffing pad from Harbor Freight, and without having to do multiple layers of buffing, this urethane paint, single step urethane paint, and that buffing pad gave me a remarkably good finish on the aircraft. As good, if not better in some cases, than the original sheen on the aircraft. So very, very happy. I was anticipating doing multiple buffings on this, but it really worked out with just 1 or 2 quick overs. So that was really, really nice and helped save a lot of time.
I just can't say enough about the materials that I used to get this final finish on the aircraft. I was rather surprised. I was really expecting to have to do multiple layers of compounding and sanding to get the final finish on the aircraft. I'm happy to say that essentially all I had to do was one major layer of compounding to the aircraft to get this wonderful finish. And I just want to show you what I used to get that. Primarily, I was using this Meguiar's product. You'll notice it has the red line all the way up on the side, meaning it's their most gritty compound. And I used that along with the Bauer green medium duty buffing pad that has a little bit of grit to it itself. If I open this up, you can see it's fairly stiff and it's got a little bit of a finish to it itself. Those two things together with my random orbital sander and buffer did an absolutely amazing job on the bottom of the aircraft. I mean, the finish on it in most of the area underneath is comparable, if not beyond, what was originally on the aircraft. So I'm very, very happy with these products. I'm very, very happy how it came out. Alrighty, now that we got the airplane down off the stands and the bottom finished and all the repairs to the bottom of the aircraft done, we're going to do some more work on the airplane, bring it up to snuff. We got a couple of nitpicky items that we got to deal with. We got a nav light here on the starboard wingtip. It's a combined strobe and nav light, and the nav light portion of it stopped working, so I've got a replacement coming from the original manufacturer. Additionally, we're going to go ahead and change from the Sensenich prop that we have on the airplane right now over to a brand new 3-bladed Duke propeller. Shane will be down in a couple of days to take care of that. Also, we're going to be obviously replacing the squat switches that caused the problem with the landing gear to begin with. And I'll give you a quick show of where they are in the aircraft and what we're going to do to repair them. All right, let's take a look inside. We come into the cockpit and I've got the interior pulled out. And you can see behind the header tank here, those couple of slots, and you can actually see the jack screw back there as well. Where those slots are is where the upper squat switch goes to stop the movement of the gear in the up position. And down here, if you look behind this opening, you can see a aluminum piece with holes drilled in it. That's part of the retraction mechanism for the landing gear. That happens to be the starboard side. There's another one over here on the port side. But hiding behind that is the lower squat switch that limits the gear down position. And that's the one that stayed closed when we had the incident. So we're going to replace that as well. So let's take a look at what we're doing to replace the actual squat switches themselves. Let's check it out. Okay, so what we have for the squat switch situation is this is one of the original squat switches from the aircraft itself. You can see that it's square, about 1/4 of an inch thick. It has a paddle on it with a roller at the end, and moves to direct from a 3-wire arrangement, power coming in from one source and then getting distributed either to one or the other wires depending on whether the switch is depressed or not. Could not find the same exact switch here online despite an exhaustive search. So what I've come up with is some waterproof switches that are well sealed. They'll do the same thing, a little bit different screw pattern on them, so we had to make some modification to the mounting area there by creating another slot, because the original one had both screw positions in the same alignment. This one is diagonally from one corner to the other corner, so it's another 3-wire design as well. So that power comes in and it gets distributed either to one or the other wires, whether the switch is depressed or not. These feel a lot more robust than the original one, so that's a plus. Also have some L brackets that put together that give us some spacing on the backside of the switch itself when it's mounted in there, so the switch mechanism itself with the roller and the paddle is in the same location as it was originally. Gives us some further protection as well to keep them healthy. So that's what we're doing, and we'll put them in the airplane now. All right, so we are happy to announce that we got the Seamax back in the air today. Went up to my 3 bounces
Yes,
to
he
get
did.
legal. And then we went for a nice little flight around, and she performed amazing. Everything worked just perfectly. We're so happy. We didn't get her wet yet. Maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, it's
New
Christmas
Prop is
Eve.
giving us some different performance parameters that are kind of nice. Higher top end, a little bit lower static for us, so we're going to work on that. But otherwise, it was absolutely wonderful to get back in.
Coincidentally, this is the anniversary of the day that you got this actual plane.
4 years ago today,
Yeah.
I took delivery of this airplane. So
So it was like bittersweet. So
it was
much
made to
fun.
happen today.
Yes,
So.
absolutely. Best day ever.
Thank you so much for all of you for joining us in this amazing journey of initially despair and embarrassment, and now to
Play.
exactly, and now to success and on to bigger and brighter things. Thank you so much for all of you, all the input that you gave us, all the encouragement you gave us, and all the hints and helpfulness that you gave us.
It really
appreciate
was. It was so nice to get up in the air today. I can't tell you. It was so lovely. Thank you, sweetheart.
Thank you.
I love you.
Love you too.